Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to feed this bin here, and it seems like in all of my systems, or if not all of them, quite possibly the majority of them, or most likely the majority of them, have some sort of a weird, out of the ordinary kind of a feeding pattern going on, or some sort of a test material being run through it. Recently I tested some worm chow ingredients I was thinking of adopting. This is kind of cool. There's like a little mushroom growing on this piece of paper here. It's so cool. There's another one right here. This one's actually quite tall. These funny little mushrooms growing off the paper, top covering paper here. Well, the top covering paper was covered also. It had that bubble wrap. As far as coverings go, last but not least, is the covering, which was really an indicator to show us where we last fed. Although, if there was nothing else here, I think there'd be kind of visual clues to the fact that that's where the last feeding occurred. Some fresh castings, a little bit of a depression in the depth of the material here, based on the absence of the food that was placed there. The food was placed in here 14 days ago, 2 weeks since the system was last fed. Good amount of moisture going on down over here. I skimmed through the last video just to get a glimpse at what those food items were that they were given last time. The stuff they got fed last time was placed onto the side of the bin where we've got the cotton materials, cotton socks and part of a cotton beach towel. And since this is where they were last fed, it's the twine side of the bin that's going to get fed today. So besides these things here, the cotton bedding came in later. The twine has been in here now for 71 days. The cotton's been in here for 10 days fewer, for 61 days. It's kind of interesting watching other people's videos where they're composting various types of fabrics, t-shirts, jeans, you name it. It's really kind of nice to look down at this piece of sock, this piece of cotton, and see a good number of little tiny worms looking like they're pretty comfortable on this stuff. Some of them so small that they're barely visible. But they're definitely baby worms. And my guess is that them hanging out on the sock is an indication of them also eating the sock. Or at least that's my hope. The stuff I put in here for them last time as a feeding was a wide variety of all different types of veggies. This was a piece of an onion, must have started going bad. This is like the outer skin of it. It's one of those no-no type foods. The no-no or the forbidden food topic seems to be making its rounds around different other YouTube channels pertaining to worm farming. I've been seeing a lot of that going on. And here and there in my bins, it just sort of happens, not as like a deliberate act of saying, I'm going to break the rules and I'm going to feed forbidden foods. Just, you don't really think of them as forbidden foods anymore after you've had good success composting this stuff. So I don't know where some of these wives' tales about do's and don'ts on worm farming come from, but so many of them I hear are just not true. Look at this thing. I don't know what this was, but it could have been like a pumpkin, maybe. I don't know. I've been feeding a lot of pumpkin, although I'm pretty careful to remove most of the seeds, but you never know. Maybe one slipped by, or cucumber. Maybe a cucumber. It's another one of those very seedy foods. Alright, I'm not going to pick too carefully through the rest of this. I'd really like to just see how the other pieces of material are coming along if possible. See what other leftovers, if any, we're able to find. There was a pretty good variety of things put in here, but all of them seem like stuff that the worms would really enjoy and probably devour quickly. And if we keep giving them such awesome foods, they're not going to take a lot of interest in the consumption of the bedding. So we'll never see these socks and towels get eaten. So where's the towel, though? We've seen plenty of sock. Here we go. I'm not sure if one type of cotton material, this terry cloth towel, versus the, cotton socks, if one or the other has a particular type of flavor or texture or something about it that the worms might prefer. I don't know. Maybe it's really just down to what types of juices of foods are dripping onto it. Something I don't think I've tried yet is to turn it inside out. Maybe we'll just leave it that way so we can get a slightly different view of it, and maybe also expose the worms to a slightly different I don't know, property of it or something. I don't know. This is one of the elastic ones where I expect to find strands of material that are not cotton. But then these other pieces, some of these other pieces, I cut the elastic calf covering portion of the sock off the bottom part that covers your actual foot. For whatever reason, I guess mainly just to separate the part that has elastic from the part that does not. I'm sure it probably wouldn't have made a whole lot of difference. So yeah, there's like other little bits of food here. This looks like it must have been a tomato. And this thing here, this is, I believe, the skin of a kiwi. The telltale is usually where the stem was, I believe, or where the flower was, and there's still that little tiny remnant of it. And just by feeling it, I could tell that that's what that is. Man, that kiwi goes way back. Alright, most recent feeding is usually the fun place to check in a worm bin. That's where you're going to find a whole lot of the action. And we didn't find a whole lot of leftovers, though. That's for sure, right? Found a couple tiny fragments of things. But, I think they're doing a really nice job. I'd like to finally start seeing some progress on the cotton, though. It'd be nice one of these days to start seeing big openings, big holes developing. But I think with this type of material, you just got to be patient, you know, so I'm not going to try to get myself all wound up about lack of progress or shattered expectations. So this is all really new to me. I've not yet composted fabrics. I did try once in the past, but then I had trouble with those systems, or that system where the fabrics were trying to be composted, so I ended up abandoning that due to the issues I was encountering at that time. Never got back to it till now, so this is really my first, well, I don't know, we'll see if it ends well. If I have issues here too, it might be another incomplete fabric composting test that I'll have to someday get back on track and try a third time if this doesn't work, but I got a feeling this is going to work. The system seems pretty happy and healthy. There's a lot of worms in here. This banana stem must go back quite a way. There's even a worm or two hanging out down within it. It's so weird how they like to crawl down into little cavernous openings and stuff. Let's throw that down there with the cotton. It was on this side of the bin, so let's keep it over there. But I think we got to get on with this feeding here, right? Give these little guys some food. I think there was something like, what, 11 days? 12 days between feedings when we came in here last time. Now with another 14 days, so this side of the bin hasn't been fed in quite some time. Oops, sorry for all the squeaky noise. Rubber gloves. So this is the twine. There's definitely bits of it here and there, and I'm always going to see if I can track down, you know, a reasonable amount of the stuff that we're trying to watch the progress of, so we can kind of get a good look at it as a whole, if it's possible. It would be nice to think that this 71-day-old twine is already starting to get some attention from the worms. So like, here's a pretty good sized ball of this stuff, and I don't know if the worms hanging out within it are there because of some sort of a food that dropped onto it, or some sort of drippings that ended up in the stuff. You know, because if they were this jazzed about the twine, they'd be all over it everywhere. So the fact that they're into it and on it in some places is cool, but it might be a good idea to continue sweetening the deal to get them on and into the twine by continuing to feed yummy foods onto it. know what this is. Super hard. Wouldn't break. I think I've encountered it numerous times in the past. I might have to exclude this, let it dry off, flake off whatever's stuck to it so I can get a better look at what this thing is. It might be like a piece of wood that doesn't really make a lot of sense in this sort of a environment. It might break down in hundreds and hundreds of days, but my bins usually don't go quite that long. Alright. Having trouble finding twine. And, you know, it could just be attestable to me being a little bit sloppy with it in past check-ins. So we're not going to go bananas trying to gather it all up or hunt down every strand. But if we see some obvious pieces of it, it'd be kind of nice to get it all together so we can consolidate it, get it all into one spot so that when we're adding today's feeding, we could position it straight on top of this stuff. Try to keep the interest and the movement in and on the twine at maximum if possible. I guess there's always that next feeding that's going to distract the worms and send them running after the newest foods and stuff on the opposite end of the bin. So it might not be a completely fair test when you do it this way, where you've got sort of another portion of the bin, another region of the bin that's going to periodically pull the attention of the worms away when that's the side that gets fed, and then the worms will be returned to here at the next feeding. Sort of like an on and off switch. Although I'm sure a lot of worms will just stick around and not go chasing after the newest food. There's still worms in here, but I don't see any signs of any leftovers. I don't really recall what was placed in here as that feeding way back then. If it was 14 and then it was like another 12, I think, right? So 3.5 weeks. Whatever was fed to this side is long gone. A little bit of the bedding remains from what had been put in here alongside the food. And my plan wasn't to always add more twine. Each time I feed, it was like an initial specific amount so that it can be watched as it deteriorates from that amount to eventually nothing. So if we need to put more bedding in here, we certainly can. And I've got my supply of pre-made bedding here if we decide to add it. And we might. I don't remember if we've done so in the past, because I think this system already was built with lots and lots of bedding, and I see plenty of shredded paper all over the place. Some of it's even in little bundles. I'll try to break those up if I encounter them. But maybe just in the interest of not being stingy on the bedding, even though the system doesn't seem to be lacking in bedding, maybe we will just sprinkle a little bit down right beneath the twine, just so we can say we added some. And then we could put the twine on top of that, right? So before we reconstruct this feeding area, get the twine back in action, get some fresh bedding and so on and so forth, I do need to still go fetch some food for them. So I'm going to head up to the freezer now, get a little something to throw in here. We'll get this system fed and that'll be done. Well, the feeding that this system got last time was pretty effective. You got a lot of worms all over that cotton, but you got to admit, what we've got here for them today is going to give the twine a good little bump in action, I believe. Look at all this. Cucumbers, banana peels, some coffee, even a fresh coffee filter that could become our feeding zone indicator. We'll even reuse the old coffee filter that was serving that purpose. Make it into a piece of bedding to include with the feeding. And look at all that strawberry. Man, this is a nice feeding. They're also going to get worm chow. They're going to get fresh bedding. Oh my goodness, grit. So, man, this is really nice feeding for these guys. A couple of my feedings lately have just seemed so delicious from the perspective of all the different assorted things that they get and just the amount of it and the way it's all arranged. I don't know. Makes me hungry after I finish setting up one of these systems. So here's that old coffee filter that had been sitting out on top as our feeding zone indicator. Like to just take a look at it sometimes to see if there's a section of it that might have received a little extraordinary wear. Alright, so let's start bringing in the stuff. All of this stuff down here. I don't have a lot of it. Got a little bit of coffee here. We can sprinkle in this little bit of coffee to mix it in with these paper shreds that we threw in at the bottom. This will be like a nice little bottom layer for our feeding. All the juice is coming out of that cucumber, out of that strawberry. All that stuff's going to drip right down into here. And I got a feeling this paper is going to just get gobbled right up. And you know what? As long as we're on that topic, it's not the paper we're interested in seeing get eaten, is it? It's the twine. So it's hard to tell. I'm not really performing this in a very scientific way, this test. There's just more of a curious thing because I had some twine laying around, and I've even got some more that I could follow up this usage of twine with if it works well. If it doesn't work well, then, well, the remaining twine that I got can go elsewhere. Let's set up their feeding. This stuff just came out of the freezer, but it's really not that. Some of it's actually thawing quite quickly. So we'll drop in some of this. Like I said earlier, I've got a variety of other things here off camera for them. This stuff is the pulverized eggshell. That's what I use as grit down here, and then my worm chow, pulverized seeds and grains. A variety of different stuff in here. And I've got kind of a repeat, right? We can start into just another layer. I mean, we've used all the coffee, so we can't add any more coffee. But and I don't know if the grit, do we need to put more grit in? Maybe we could sprinkle more grit right onto the foods that they're getting. Maybe we just pile in what remains. Pour in the last little bit here. There's even a piece of tomato here. Another piece of banana. This is almost like a piece of strawberry juice ice cube because it had all been so deteriorated already. Or maybe it was frozen once, and then by the time I brought it home from my mom's, it had already started to thaw and drip out into the bottom of the bag and create a little strawberry juice puddle. So that's a nice bit of moisture that's going to go dropping down. Speaking of moisture, I've got my BTI here too. This is the MOSQUITO dunks. This feels to me like I should pour it onto something that's going to do a little absorption of the material. So I didn't plan on using all of it. I just scooped a little bit out. So maybe this is a good opportunity to just put another little mound of our prepared bedding here. Treat it as a little bit of a sponge to pour this stuff into, just so it all doesn't end up at the very bottom of the bin immediately. Maybe try help suspend some of it up in the feeding area here. You know, we could sprinkle some here and there. This will be, I guess, treatment number 2 of the BTI. I still see a good number of flying insects in here, so hopefully it starts to take effect soon. But I think we've got pretty much everything taken care of here. I just wonder what I've forgotten. We put the food in, we added grit, we added plenty of bedding. The twine is in place. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Just kind of loosely covering our feeding area, make it really easy for worms to pass through this material so they can get at the fresh feeding. And I mean, yeah, there was a little bit of material left here. We saw a little bit of tomato, a little piece of onion, not a whole lot though. So I think we've rung the dinner bell, and I think they're going to come running pretty soon. Whether we want to wait 14 days again between now and the next feeding is questionable, although we've certainly loaded up that feeding area with enough bedding and everything else to keep these little guys busy for 2 more weeks if we had to wait that long. So we'll see. We'll see when we come back in here. But for now, I think we're done here. We've got a couple more. We've got a couple more coverings. This piece of paper here too will probably soon get used as bedding within a feeding, but for now it seems to be holding together well enough to be used once again as our top covering. And last but not least, our bubble wrap. With the bubbles down, I think that way you've got little channels of air perhaps a little bit better breathability, but still does a terrific job holding the moisture down within the system. All right, everyone, that's it for our feeding of the now 89-day red wiggler system, where they're kind of competing unusual bedding types being tested here. Not so much that they're competing, it's more just to see what happens. Curiosity. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.